Afternoon, Alice.
Afternoon, Clint. We can hear you.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Is it?
You need to have runaways as a successor so that you can
Yeah, look after him. Yeah. Too right. Too right. Afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our workshop day. Just a reminder that we've got a couple of apologies today. Paul is away at the his Potatoes New Zealand AGM, and Rogan is in Australia. We have Clint booming in online, and obviously just a couple running a bit late at the moment. Okay, all right. Also, just noting that Monika's away today as well. She's away at a conference in Auckland. So we've got a number of workshops and briefings in front of us today. The first one being Waikawa Beach Accessway, which is today just an update on where we sit at that issue and topic, to just also conscious that today is not about decision making or even direction or predetermination. This is just about receiving information, having a discussion around whether there is any more information that you need, and at some stage and I'm sure Lacey and Brent will tell us about when that decision might be coming back to us. Other than that, I think we're in your hands. Thank you. Just noting that we welcome to those members of the public that are sitting in the audience. Good to have you here. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou. I'm here today to talk to you about two of the accessways at Waikawa Beach. As you can see, we'll be focusing within the know and do sections as I provide information on where we are and next steps. So the purpose is to update you on what we've done so far, particularly following the last time that this kaupapa was before Council in March of this year. We'll be looking at both a potential alternative vehicle accessway at Waikawa Beach, as well as the next steps for the pedestrian bridge. So access to Waikawa Beach continues to be a very significant conversation for those within the Waikawa community. This is for all beach users in the different ways that they like to access the beach. There remains a number of emotions and tensions within the community. Over the past several months, myself and other parks and property members have met with a number of groups. We have regular conversations with the Ratepayer Association, and I do just want to say that they've been fantastic at sharing information both ways. We've also met with the Walk on Waikawa group, Environmental group, Vehicles on Waikawa group, Horse Riders, and many others, including those with disabilities within their whānau. I sent email updates to those who submitted on the vehicle access topic with progress and of items that council may be, that are happening within council that may be of interest to them, such as the consultation on the public places bylaw. There has been an illegal track made via council-owned land, which is what this picture shows on the screen there. So there have been a few people who are in or on vehicles accessing the beach at Waikawa. Approval has been given for 3 months for horse riders to access the beach via council-owned land, following consultation with Wehi Wehi and the Ratepayers Association. I do want to just be clear that no matter the way forward, there will be sections within the Waikawa community who will be disappointed. Yes. Yes.
It's not working. When we say illegal tracks made,
Yes.
why are they, in the absence of the bylaw, which is consulting on the moment, what makes it illegal in terms of, is it the lack of consent? Or?
Yes.
Okay, so it's,
Yes.
so it's the lack of consent.
It's the lack of consent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So just,
Lucy, just
yes.
to confirm that the lack of consent is for to go through that particular bit of property, not actually be on the beach. Is that right?
So yeah, through the June, coastal reserve. Yeah. So it's illegal through our property, on that section. Yes. Yeah. So vehicles, yes, but foot traffic, horse riding at this point is legal. Yeah.
People can presumably still use private property to access, or?
It depends on whereabouts.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay,
So, just brief background. Historically, there was vehicle access via privately owned land. This did have some challenges with the Waikawa stream, including bank erosion, and therefore there was consent for works to address some of the track washout. This consent expired in 2020. We then got Boffa to assess the different options. There were 5 options included in the report. 3 of those options were taken to community for consultation. 2 of those options were taken to community for consultation alongside no vehicle access. We received 446 submissions, with 70% of those submitting preferring options that supported vehicle access. And then the resolution from that March 20 meeting was that after hearing submissions on options 1, 2 and 3, and given the general level of support for the provision of vehicle accessway, that Council pauses the current process and requests the Chief Executive to report back to Council on alternative options to provide vehicle accessway at Waikawa Beach. So what have we done since that time? As mentioned, we've met and had a lot of conversations with groups and individuals within Waikawa. There have been a number of email communications as well, including 3 that asked all submitters to get in touch if they had potential options for consideration over privately owned land. We also had conversations with 2 landowners, and so far there has been no privately owned land where it's being able to be explored as a potential option. We have spoken with community members who are willing to provide money for vehicle access, and following that we have sought advice from Horizons. I do also want to mention that we are working with the community on planting days, and actually have one planned for next Sunday the 22nd, where we will be planting spinifex and collecting rubbish. So where that has left us is that we are working with the community. We have identified between 47 and 49 Mangapedo Street is the best potential option to explore further. So on here, how do I do a laser? Sorry. Buttons. Oh, there we go. So that's through here. Through here, in there. And this was option 2 in the Boffa-Miskell report. The other options on council-owned land within that report are on Raymacay Grove, and these were deemed through that exploration as a bit more difficult and less desirable by the community. So as mentioned, we have asked Horizons for their advice regarding this preferred potential option, which is option 2 in the report. Horizons did originally provide input into that report. The advice we received was to analyse this option further. So this would include getting a technical assessment on the ecology, earthworks, cultural effects, and also against the Marine and Coastal Takutai Moana Act. So before this comes back to council for a decision, it would be great to get some advice, some direction on what further information councillors need to make that decision. Whether you want the reports for that decision making or not.
I was just wondering if you went back a slide to the map, and so where the red dot is, so there's a track obviously there. What's all these other blocks of land that it goes through? Are they all council land, or is that some river parcels and all sorts out there?
So that is council land. There are some sections that are dock, but in terms of that, and that is council. Yeah. Yes, that's right. So that is the river, and the previous track across privately owned land went this way.
And that land extended quite a bit out into that area too, didn't it?
Yes. So the landowners who own this section actually own all this parcel, which you can see. So there would need to be consideration on getting potential easement. They own all of that. Yeah.
Lacey, what sort of distance is it from that option 2 from where it enters to the bit of the riverside there? Is that how much? So a new path would need to be created for the whole length of that, or is that?
It would depend on what the consent conditions are.
Right.
But from memory, it's about 160 metres.
Well,
I'm getting
quite low, is it?
nods from the community in the background there.
Right.
Based on what you just said about the privately owned block extending out, are the previous discussions were about vehicle passage over the vegetated area, but are there has there been discussions, and is there clarity around whether there is support for vehicles to travel over the river and beach areas? Because is this option, just kind of want to get a sense of, is this option live?
Good question. There has previously, not more recently, been vague discussions, is how I would put it, around vehicle access over this part of, what's kind of the foreshore that they own. And at that stage, there were no concerns from the private landowners. However, nothing is formalised from that sense.
Lacey, just your statement there that 47 to 49 has been identified by community and officers. Just give me a sense in terms of how that was reached.
Sure. So, from a officer's point of view, it was reading through the report and looking at the different viability of the options as outlined on there and the routes that we would have to take. And from a community point of view, I would say that there are still a number of community members who would think it's easier easier, I would say, to access the beach via Ray McKay, but the vast majority that we have spoken to and who have been continuing to engage with us over the past few months prefer an option in the village.
Where has the track been created?
That is where the illegal
is.
track is
Okay.
currently. So yeah, it's through here.
That's true.
In March, when we came to you with this kaupapa, it was as it kind of looks like there. Quite overgrown, a lot of vegetation, some driftwood and whatnot. That has since been removed, and so there is a lot more traffic through there, whether it's with pedestrians, horse riders, or the odd vehicle.
So you basically want some direction around whether to keep exploring this option. Well, I'm happy to indicate that, I'm really, really keen for you to keep progressing that as an option to obtain the necessary reports in order to support that decision making. I'm pretty keen, and I know you also indicated that the discussions with private landowners so far have not been fruitful, but there is a pretty obvious, much easier solution, which is that obviously one of those private properties at the end of Munga Parau Street, and whether it's full acquisition or partial acquisition, that would be, in my mind, the optimal outcome, because it's obviously less distance. It seems like it's, and so whether we could keep, I guess I'd support also trying to keep that option alive and perhaps revisit those discussions to say, well, what we're after is partial acquisition of a access strip. How can we see this working, and what's the price tag, basically? Because that's where I kind of sit, is that until that option is completely dead and out of the water, like to keep it alive.
So in terms of that, Councillor Jennings, we can still engage in conversations. Just to be really clear, that we've engaged with the 3 property owners directly in those parcels around probably any.
So the first 2 are owned by the same person, and then I believe this one is the other one that we might have. Oh, I can't. Yeah, one of those we have also asked.
In the options that you're going to come back to us with, are you going to provide costings and maintenance and all that sort of stuff? I mean, obviously there has to be a level of a track which you're going to fall, so we get all that information.
Absolutely, you get all that information, because we would have to go through a resource consenting process, that the related costs to get that consent will be included.
And Councillor Proctor, I think it's with some of the additional work that we need to do in terms of those reports, that will come at a cost too, that we would need to go away again with, but that would also need to, if the decision of council was to continue with the resource consent application, those reports would obviously support that.
Lacey, I know we haven't talked about it yet, but the bridge obviously is part of this whole thing. What is part of an option to make the bridge, rebuild the bridge, make it bigger so that it actually does take vehicles as well? Is that an option, or is it not worth exploring?
So you might recall in the Boffa-Miskell report, we can carry on to the bridge conversation if you want, because that is the next item, and then we can kind of wrap up at the end if you want, if that's helpful. So in the Boffa-Miskell...
Sorry, I did have another question
sorry.
the other, the Ria Mackay ones. It said there that it's deemed more difficult and less desirable by the community, but I assume also that consenting wise and other things like that also play a part in that space rather than just the community deciding that they're not good.
So from an officer point of view, that's why it was not viewed as the best potential option to move forward with, because of the consent conditions that we would have to go through for those Ray Mackay council-owned land options. Sorry, Mayor Burney, just go back to your question regarding the bridge. That was one of the options in the Boffa-Miskell report, and it ends at privately owned land, which is why it was here. So, just talking, if you want to, talking about the bridge, just to show you whereabouts it is in relation to what we just discussed. So that's where we just discussed, and the bridge is over here. And so currently there are 2 pedestrian accessways to Waikawa Beach within what is, been known as the village. And I just want to kind of point out that in the long-term plan there has been budget set aside for next financial year for Waikawa Accessway of $1.2 million. This was to incorporate both the vehicle access and or the bridge. So the Waikawa Beach footbridge crosses over the Waikawa stream. It was built in 1990, and in 2019 Council did some strengthening work on the bridge. Since then we have been getting yearly reports, engineering reports, to ensure the safety of the bridge. And you would have received, hopefully, the latest one that we got in June this year. So in terms of the next steps for the bridge, and this could be something to consider alongside vehicle accessway as well, is do you need further reports done before this comes back to Council on a decision on the future of this bridge? Or,
given that the bridge is in the state of repair it's in, and it's going to be back on the radar at some stage to either do something with, take it away, or put a new one and whatnot. And I look at the span of 50 odd metres, so it's not a small distance, I know, but have we done, or can we do any research on what a cost of a rudimentary Bailey style type bridge would be that can take one vehicle, one-way bridge across it? Have we done anything around that space to give us some idea what sort of cost you'll be looking at? It seems to me, I know there's, and think about Okio, which I know is a lot smaller in terms of distance, but that works very well to get over the other side and follow the river and out onto the beach. So
there has been some, I guess, different options looked at in terms of replacement of the bridge. In some cases, when we've been looking at full replacement, a lot of the cost comes with consent. So how do we reduce what the impact is on the river to ensure that the cost remains down? Last indication that we had for a full replacement was around $600,000. of a footbridge. That's correct. Yeah.
There's already piles in the river, so yeah.
That's right, and we have had an initial conversation with James Wallace from the Land Transport team to look at other options that his team might be aware of that we can, in their knowledge.
Is it though an either-or conversation in terms of access or the footbridge? Because I would have thought that the cost-wise and consenting-wise, that it might mean that we have to make a choice as to which one we prioritise.
That could be something that we bring to council for a decision that is, wrapped up in one around costings for both options and what the future looks like.
Hey guys, just want to acknowledge our Waikawa residents that are joining us here today. Complex situation you leave us in. Look, the options are really interesting. A couple of questions from me is, I am interested in what are the different complexities around the consenting for the two sites, Mangapuro and Reo Makai. So what is the vast difference around consenting that's required at those two locations?
Just while Lacey's getting some of the detailed information, I think it comes back down to the initial report that we came down with Boffin-Miskel, where they took into a whole lot of different factors based on what would be required for a consent. And I think you recall at some point we put on the council paper last time, we had the coloured coded graph that showed the likelihood of each site. So the other sites probably, I dare say how long, like very high chance that consent wouldn't be granted based on the condition, based on the information they had at the time. So Lacey's got a little bit more concerns: cultural values, terrestrial ecology, aquatic ecology, natural character, coastal geomorphology, and so very overall, it gives an overall score based on each of those sort of components.
I find that quite interesting because the first option is potentially over 100 to 150 metres of going across what one could consider natural environments and landscapes to achieve an access, whereas at the Reo Makai, we're not crossing the same vast amount of land, are we, to access the beach? And secondary to that, I'm just looking at my maps and judging that those distances are quite different, significantly different. But also, I'm also interested in the options because we've already discussed that this access at Mangapuro is going to access Māori private land, no matter what. So it doesn't matter where you put it there, you're still potentially going to have a conversation with those private landowners. And given what we've witnessed in the past, there might not be an appetite to let anyone across their private land, which could in fact, incite other matters, tensions in the community and things like that they've already experienced. So I'm just thinking about that. So none of the other options impede on private or Māori land, do they?
No, they don't. The main difference is the covenants over that area, and it would, from memory, it would require us to go to the Environment Court to get a resource consent over that Strathnagar section.
Lacey, can I just check something? And I remember from the last time, the workshop before our decision, where we looked at the Boffin-Miskel report and all the options. And so option one was replacing the existing pedestrian bridge with a vehicle bridge and pedestrian bridge. But as I remember, it was the reasons that that option wasn't preferable was because it goes onto private property, even though there is a paper road there. But equally, it doesn't really help with the vehicle access in that that's not the main beach that people typically want to get to. They want to get to the south beach, right? And so that's been the primary sort of focus is getting access to the south side of the river. Am I understanding that correctly?
That is correct. So most of the feedback and a lot of the conversations I have with people who are really keen to access the beach with their vehicles are people who are fishing and therefore would prefer the other end of the Waikawa beach.
Yeah, okay. And sorry, I'm going to just fill the void of the silence with another question. So the pedestrian bridge at the moment, like if we treat that as a separate issue, do we actually have an understanding of the level of usage and whether, does it? I guess what I'm coming to is a question around is maintaining that pedestrian access in that location critical, or is actually the higher priority to get vehicle access, which pedestrians, horses, vehicles, everyone can use at the right location?
I couldn't confidently answer that question for you. We haven't had a counter on that bridge, for example, or asked that question directly of the community. However, I think we could easily, with our relationship with the Ratepayer Association, ask that question, if that would be helpful.
Personally, I'd find that helpful because if we're saying that pedestrian bridge goes onto private property anyway, how much is it being used? Because I sitting here, I would say our priority is to restore the vehicle access, use the budget that we've got for the. And so trying not to conflate the two decisions, but also just trying to understand which one is more important than the other.
Basically, if we went to the 47-49 option, the block we own, what's the which obviously vehicles come out would follow the riverbank along. What's the erosion risk in that area to any kind of track that might be formed or anything like that? Is there?
It would be if you're talking about the river, similar to what we have experienced in the other in the previous beach accessway that was via privately owned land. So we would, obviously need a resource consent around and look at options for river training or river management for that.
Sorry, I'm just so given the very generous offer of financial support from members of the community, in particular Kurt, who's sitting in the gallery today, when does the decision around the pedestrian bridge need to be made, and can we hold off on that? Because I'm really concerned about us conflating the two decisions. I think, essentially the advice you've given us today is that it's not really viable to think about replacing the pedestrian bridge with a vehicle access, and so that kind of rules that option out. So that it means that we can treat the two things as separate decisions, including separate funding decisions. And so, if we say we've got to deal with the vehicle access optioneering piece first, and as I say, there's that offer offer of financial support that might make some of those options more viable. Can we wait the outcome of that before making decisions on the pedestrian bridge?
The latest report that we had done on the bridge said that it's, they can confidently give us, but it should last 18 months.
So, right, couple other questions. Terms again, 47 to 49, which puts you out onto the edges of the stream, and then got to go through private property, even though it's just the same Muratana family, I presume. Yep. Fine. Have we had any conversations with them around their feeling of that? And two, the track that, and I mean, we might not have gone this far. I'm just trying to get my head around it. So if we use that property that we now own, we're not looking at putting a State Highway 1 quality roadway through there, are we? Surely it's just a track that you can get through in a four-wheel drive vehicle or a quad bike, not Nanny Granddad's Toyota Corolla. Is that fair?
I would say that was fair, with the caveat that it would be reliant on whatever our resource consent conditions would be and what they would require us to, create and provide. In response to your initial question, it was mentioned when we were having our conversations around access via their land initially, and then the subsequent conversations we had with them after the March 20 council meeting and decision. And generally via the beach, at the moment people access the beach via their land, not, traversing across that part of the foreshore, which is technically owned by them without any issues or concerns. So without having anything formalised or formally asking the question at this stage, but we will. There hasn't been any concern up until this point.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. Yeah. And the reason I asked that is because I know experience from the northern end of the district. When we provide a reasonable access, it gets controlled a lot better. A lot of the issues go away. If we continue to not have that, people will find their own way through, and they're going to cross that land anyway. So it's best, the message from the experience up there is let's do it, make it controlled. And it works better for all around. And I know there's a challenge to that already, but that's the experience I've had up there.
Oh, sorry, buddy. So, in terms of the process for us, we'll get a report back, we'll pick an option, and then you'll go out for the resource consent. And what's the risk of that consent actually getting through or not? And then we're back at square one again, picking another option.
As you can imagine, no one's been forthcoming in providing that assurance to us at this point. When we come back for a final decision, keeping in mind that no access is still on the table as an option, there will be that risk management lens across the report for councillors to make a decision on how likely a consent would be. Without trying to simplify this, because I know it's not simple, the way in which I describe it might sound a bit, but anyway, I'll give it a shot. So this is our first meeting or workshop since we've heard from the Waikawa community and all came to speak where you sit. I guess for me the what I heard or what I sort of resonated with why we're
together we got to this point is mainly about the vehicle access. That's what we're trying to enable. And for me, it was about that launching boats, fishing, and if in the case of an emergency, we need to get a vehicle on the beach. That was my thinking about what I heard. And now, with these options and understanding that the boats or the vehicles go south of the river, I hear you when they say pedestrians or they want something closer to the village, which means north. But if this is about vehicle access, it makes sense to the south. Okay? And of that particular map, I don't know if you can pull it up. This is I might be too simple in this, but the shortest path is option 5. And when you think about the shortest path, I think, less disruption of dunes, of habitats, of what is right along that coast. And if we're about the least disruption, if that is, according to these lines, the most direct and shortest path, and it fits with the boats or vehicles to the south, why that wouldn't be one of the options going forward. Granted, wherever we go, there will be bird life and things like that, that's been highlighted as a concern for some. So, DOC does it well to take care of moving wildlife over or along to make way before construction. And they do it for roads, they do it for many things. So, is it in your being closer to the action, is that 5 completely off the table? And you're showing us the one up there, number 2.
I wouldn't say any option is off the table. It was option 2 was the one that we inquired about because it was deemed the easiest to get consent for. Options 4 and 5 have the outstanding natural feature overlay on them, which would make it a longer, higher risk consenting process. The outstanding natural feature is significantly different to the ones in the north because of what elements exactly? So that overlay is part of the what's known as the Strathnaver area, which does not apply to Mangapito. But if you want further details on what that outlines, I can send that through to you.
Because I guess I'd consider, that whole environment is one and the same. It's all connected. It's all has its own life and being. And if it's just a matter of that's on the schedule, deemed natural or outstanding natural versus just a few hundred metres north, that to me doesn't make sense. That it's has a special character within the same zone, if you know what I mean.
I do know what you mean, but yeah, that is right, as in they have different overlays.
Last dumb question. When we apply for a resource consent, can we make an application which says we've narrowed it down to 2 options. This is our preferred, this is our second preference. Which one are you supporting, so we're not having to go around like Jonathan said about, they reject that one and you're back to square one. Can we offer up two within the same application to save time and money?
I would have to check if we can offer up two, but I think the intention would be to work with them, with Horizons as close as possible in the lead up to get the information, get some level of information about what they see as more palatable before we apply.
Yeah, no, resonating with Puri. Definitely thinking. I'm glad that Sam summarised it well by keeping the bridge separate to everything. I think that the bridge access, pedestrian access, is an important factor to maintain for the village and connectivity and looking after that area, as we've been very well articulated to. But I'm definitely interested in exploring probably option 4 and 5. I do want to understand a little bit more about the Strathnaver. Sorry if I'm saying it wrong. It would have been good to actually see that placed on the map, as well as even the private landowner titles would have been useful for us to understand on the map as well. And I think what I'm picking up on today is there's a lot of stuff from that previous presentation, guys, that maybe could have been formed part of today as a reminder and prompter of us of where we've come from. Because I think when we talk about priorities of the community, I'm pretty sure they told us in their submissions. And so surely we have some data there that would have informed us already that we actually here are the priorities as the community see it, and that would have just assisted us, I think, in maybe informing our decision a little bit better. Because right now I just feel I can't support the Mangapiri one entirely because I'm worried about the private ownership matter, and I'm worried about the length and stretch of the access to get down onto that coastal area. And I do think there's some validity in those other options to explore. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say to this.
Thanks, Councillor Tamihana. And we definitely can get some additional information. We did try and include a lot as a pre-reading also with the other options, but if there's further information that's required, especially around the mapping stuff, we can do some work there. Thank you.
Yeah, just for the record, that was the map on page 43.
Just to summarise, so basically, sounds like the table is pretty keen to keep alive option 47 to 49, and then I can't remember what they are on the bottom. Yeah,
4 or 5.
yeah, and then we're treating the pedestrian bridge separate, and so how are we going to progress that piece of the discussion, or are you the pedestrian bridge? Yeah.
This is what I think I heard. So it would be helpful to have an idea from the community around use of the pedestrian bridge, and ideally the next steps for a potential vehicle access way will be decided before the future of the bridge would be decided.
I think if we ask the gallery now to put your hand up if you want us to disestablish your bridge, that might give us a really quick indication. But I won't go there. But I think Sam's right. We're not talking about not having a bridge there, I don't believe. My concern around the bridge is that we continue to sweat the asset and it degrades to such a degree that we end up in a situation where we have to close it. And that's not something I want to entertain. So I'm really interested in progressing where potentially an vehicle access will go, so we can know what the budget is to establish that, and then do we have money left to actually get some maintenance work done on our pedestrian bridge to ensure that we're maintaining those two critical accesses for all of the users. And I'm getting some nods over there, so I'm guessing we're on the right track.
Would Would it also be useful then for the table and to, or for you guys to have that conversation with Kurt and other members of the community around what is that funding support, community-led funding support look like, and what are they open to in terms of willing to fund? Is it a solution, or is it part of the process in terms of commissioning reports or whatever? Because I think that's it would be useful for the table to understand what limitations or constraints or what willingness there is there in terms of that generous offer.
So one last question from me is that absolutely get the treating the two things separate. Get that. But we've got a budget so far. So the only concern I've got is that we go for one of these options with the consenting, etc., to get those across the line and choose up that budget. We're still stuck with the fixing of the bridge, with not knowing what that's going to cost. So how do we negotiate that? It's a bit of a risk there. I can see. How do we negotiate that to make sure that we're not stumping up another $1 million sometime very soon? So I probably should take it. You'll make it too hard, Brent. It's just like, how do we address that risk if we're going to treat these two things separately?
Thanks, Councillor Brannigan. I think what we'll do, if the table's comfortable, is we'll continue with option 2 and engaging with the community, but we'll also do some work in the background on the bridge to get an understanding of what we can do to increase the lifespan of the bridge, and how long that might give us to help when we come to the table next time. Noting, of course, that you want to keep the 2 matters separate, but I think there is a crossover in terms of budget, in terms of what we can and can't do. So it is an important factor when we're looking ahead.
Just to clarify, was the table comfortable with keeping the private land discussions open to? Because I think that it might involve at some point a very generous offer in order to, because if we can see that it'll have less complexity, potentially less consenting, less cost overall, and so
Yeah, open to that. But I also think if Mangaparo was considered to probably be the more supported one, then I would consider maybe we look at our property that we own, and looking at, do we look at potential of disposing a part of our property to move it somewhere else to have a better access point. So I just hope we're capturing that as well.
All good? Right. I suppose just for clarity in terms of timeline from here on then, though, Brent, I mean, the reality is this is going to take a little while, I assume, but are we likely to see this back before Christmas or not?
That's a very good question, Bernie. Intention would be to work hard to get a decision back before Christmas, but then obviously the next step for that, if the council decided to move that way and applying for a resource consent, would still take a process as well, a time. So the reality is we wouldn't be doing anything physical this summer, which I think will be difficult. But we'll push. Like ultimately, if we get a resource consent application in, which does take time, and then obviously the process we have to work through from that as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to note, we've said in there we've got $1.2 million in the long-term plan for work here. I heard us say that it was potentially $600K to replace the footbridge brand new. So that's why I'm questioning. We need to understand the side and the consenting costs, because if there's still $600K, if we were to replace the pedestrian bridge, then I need to understand how much it's going to cost to do the consenting of those other areas. Like, I don't see a massive cost in constructing the access. It sounds to me like it's all the jargon, so to speak. So I just want to impress that on us.
Can I just translate not just what you said now, but before when you talked about the private land? Did you mean land swaps? Yeah. Okay. Just I didn't hear that word, but just clarified. Okay. That maybe. And cost of consent versus construction.
And just to add on to that, if there was a swapping of property, if that was something the Miratana whānau would consider, that maybe you'd look at parking as well. Because in that cul-de-sac, it's going to start blocking up people's driveways, so just an option to consider.
Look, not to put pressure on you guys, but I'm going to put pressure on you guys. Like, I think, because obviously one of the things concern's going to be that we're going to have another summer where there's going to be considerable pressure from the community saying, where's the access? Still waiting. So, like, what is involved in expediting the process in terms of commissioning the reports so that we're then in a decision making, so that we are then able to make a decision around what option to progress with, or hopefully we're not going to have to do more consultation, are we?
I think we'll work hard to try and bring a council report back realistically to probably the October meeting. But that's dependent on the reports being done and all the other bits and pieces too. So we'll try and keep you up to date as possible. We feel it from the community. We receive emails daily from both sides, pro and against access. We know it's white belly season now. We know there's a lot of and we do honestly understand the situation the community's in. So we'll work hard, but it's not as fast as we can given what we're faced with.
It's actually us next. It's me.
Yeah, can we just have 2 minutes? Yep. Okay, let's keep moving, eh? Oh, even. Yeah, no. Just crack on, Lacey.
Kia ora team, we're moving on to our next kaupapa. First of all, I just want to introduce one of our parks officers who's joining me today. This is Nathan, and I'll give you a brief overview of cemeteries, and Nathan will go into the more details around program of works we have planned for two of our cemeteries. So this briefing sits within these two sections of our pyramid there. We aren't requiring any guidance today. We are sharing how we got to this point and what our plans are for this year within our cemeteries. I will update you on current usage and the capacity of our cemeteries, and Nathan will talk through the designs for the extensions and the next steps that we are taking this year. So just as an overview, we currently have the Avenue Cemetery in Levin, Foxton Cemetery, Manukau Cemetery and Shannon Cemetery open for interments. While we do have other cemeteries across the district, they are what we call closed. You might come across some burials happening, but they're not in the new plots. They're kind of within family areas. And of course, there's also urupa across the district that are associated with marae and hapu. So our general challenges within cemeteries are that we don't currently have a bylaw. Arthur drafted one, but it might be something that we look at in the future. A bylaw does help us set perimeters, specifications and processes, and we have had a few challenges in the past and more recently regarding headstones and the use of a cemetery, believe it or not. The RSA does have some plots that are reserved. And of course, with a growing district, there are a number of different cultural preferences that we are keeping up to date with, keeping in touch with our funeral directors, and that we just have to keep in mind. And then in terms of on-site services there, what we mean is just toilets, water and general facilities around cemeteries. So our current capacity was delivered through to me this morning by our wonderful sextons. So we have, as you can see, 150 burial plots available at Avenue, only 20 in Foxton, and Shannon 24 and Manukau 25. Ashes, there's a wee bit more capacity. And we don't currently have any capacity for natural burials, which in other districts has become more of a thing. And so just in terms of usage, the interments that we saw, the number of interments that we saw last financial year, Avenue Cemetery the most, but as you can see, there were 23 burials in Foxton, and with current capacity at 20, we need to do some work in this area rather swiftly. So I will move on to Nathan.
Good afternoon. I am Nathan, Parks and Property Officer. Just gave a quick run through the Avenue Cemetery. As you can see from the slide on the screen, that should be the overview of the current setup, as well as future setups further to the top corner.
That's the green one.
Green one, that's fine. Just up here as well. So we've got this piece of land that comes all the way through. It comes around that way. What we're going to be discussing will be this area around here and this area which we're currently looking at as well as the future. I will move to that next slide. So here's the master concept plan that we've got for that section onwards. We're working off this section currently at the moment in time is what we're going to be working through. We have this currently has been created recently last year, and we're looking to look at moving on this section at a later stage as we go through. Basically, what we're looking to do is plan updates of the update of the cemetery map, establishment of the ash gardens and seating area, which has been requested, establishment of additional ash berms within the existing cemetery footprint, which we'll discuss as well, and also the starting development of the new burial plot beams within the cemetery extension as we go through. So starting planting with the visual barrier as well and improving row markers. So currently we're looking to push the 2 ash gardens in, which will be including a seating area, and they will be located just at the end of the current driveway, right next to the current beams that we've already put in place. So ideally this will be looking to put in 50 extra ash berms each section of this garden and pergola, and it would have one each side of the area with the seating inside. We're also possibly looking to do an additional down this corner here is more ash berms to fit into this little area, which we can't currently put any burial beams. As you can see, there's a bit of a larger area for it, so this would be the area that we're working to start first, and then we'll look at to move on to the section down here for the ash berms. Next one. Oh, okay, that's all good. There was another slide in there, but that's no trouble at all. That's all good. I had that put in there. Ideally, after we've created these 2 ash areas, would be ideal to start looking at opening up this section here along the new development area. So this would be the burial beams that we're looking to integrate in the system, as well as the planned idea of having a vegetation screen with specimen trees coming up along here to create a bit of a wind barrier for as we come through. That's really the next section we're going to look at. Again, we're moving on to Foxton. Foxton, as we're aware, is at its capacity and will need to be the first one to work with first. Basically, it'll be the establishment of bollards around the new development area, establishing new burial plots, establishing new ash berm, and provisional water supply at the entrance as well. Oh, too far. Awesome. Sorry for the small image itself, but hopefully we can have a bit of a run through. So ideally, currently at the moment in time, we have a dry vault that is sitting here at where the car park is. What we're looking to do is establish the first part would be up here, and here fall behind that in the open space, which currently is. So ideally, we're looking at having some burial berms all the way through, and ash is around the edges, along with some vegetation edging up along here. This section here, as we're well aware, has got a flooding capacity at the moment in time, so this one here will probably look at more of a walkway currently at a later stage, and a possible natural burial later on. But this is something we can discuss at a later stage. Currently, we're looking to start working on this one here, which will allow extra burials to be in place. And that is it for me.
Sorry, I'm just going to outline the process that we followed to get those development plans. So they were the Foxton plan was created last year, and the Avenue Road one was done a few years ago. And during both developments of those plans, we worked with obviously our funeral directors, with our sextons, and I believe the plans have been shared with our iwi partners for Foxton, right?
And I just add in there as well that the money for these developments is budgeted as part of the LTP, but as part of that process, we heard that before we do any work, we'd come back and share it with the table and let you know what the plans are and why we're doing it.
So what is the life of and I suppose that's the wrong word, but what is the length of time before we have to start procuring more property or extending? Is it 5, 10, 30 years down the track or whatever?
Avenue Cemetery will give us an extra 50 years, 50. I'm not aware of Foxton or how long that will give us for that extra, but I'll probably hazard a guess about 20 years.
We probably do have that information which we can share. Yeah.
It was, from memory, through the LTP process, it was Manukau and other smaller ones that where there's growth constraints, and so will require future decisions around locations and stuff. But thanks for providing the update, because I think the message through the LTP was no frills, and it feels like it's no frills. There's nothing too outrageous or exciting there, and so it's pretty core. So yeah, that's good. Thanks for the feedback.
Yeah, no, thank you guys. Interesting. I suppose for me, I'll just give a plug for how great it is that we have all these urupa out there around the district that you don't have to maintain and manage, and that land is given aside by those landowners for purposes of what they carry out. And so that's really great. I think the planning actually looks really good. It's the wetland one that I'm interested in, Fox, and just making sure that that is being put back in front of our iwi partners. There, just for cultural consideration about the use of that space. And I'm actually interested to know about natural burials. Do we get many requests for them?
I believe we have had probably one or two regards to natural burials, but as we don't have this place for natural burials at the moment in time, I think it's just being put to, sorry, we cannot help you at this moment in time.
But just to be helpful for the listeners, could you just explain to them what a natural burial is? I think might be useful, because some people will be thinking, what's the difference between that and a burial?
No worries at all. Natural burial is basically a way that you can bury someone in the ground, and this is probably going to be, frankly, without a casket, and the idea of planting a tree above them for allowing that growth as well is probably the simplest way to say it.
Just want to touch on two of those points. In terms of natural burials, we keep in contact with our funeral directors, and as we hear the need for that more or the request for that more, it will become higher priority for us to provide as a service. And secondly, the water area part of the Foxton Cemetery, that is not the stage we're looking to develop this financial year, but when we look at progressing that part of the development, we will certainly re-engage.
I was just wondering around the natural burial thing as well. Some councils go through a long process to sort of adopt it, and then there is certification as well. Considering we have no bylaws, I assume that there's not going to be a need for a plan change or any major issue if you start off with, or cost associated with plan changes.
I can't confidently answer that. I can't.
Well, actually, that led me to another question. Because with any bylaw that we did, if we had to consider, how would that encapsulate urupa? Or does it? Is it just purely around our own sites? So, if there was a consideration of a bylaw, is it just purposely for our own cemeteries, or would it be applied across them? Okay, thank you.
Lacey, sorry to be particularly picky, but on your second or third slide, it talks about internments rather than interments. Internments actually means putting people into prison, and interments means you bury them. So I just wonder, anybody would be might just be a bit sort of picky about whether that. Yeah.
I have learned something today. Thank you.
Just a comment from me trying to pick up on the earlier question. We have done a pretty good job at designating our cemeteries. So what a designation allows you to do is basically continue to do that operation, the expansion or whatever's needed within that purpose. So in the case of, say, the Avenue Cemetery, I think the designation goes some distance anyway, I think. I'm just trying to look at the map. And so if we're within that area of the designation, then that allows us to obviously continue to do the expansion and those sorts of things without any new resource consents. If you're going beyond the designation, then that might be where you start to require that.
Just as a follow-up, David, to that, that's an interesting question. Would that mean, that's a useful explanation, if we required more land, could that be taken by Public Works because of the designation? I suppose I'm just trying to understand what that means if we were expanding those sites.
A bit vague on whether or not the cemeteries actually fit under as public works as such. Usual practice would be that we'd be obviously trying to secure the land to do that. I guess if we were hamstring, it would be something worth exploring. I'm just not quite clear on where the cemetery work does fit into there. But if you just want to flick back to the Avenue slide, I can probably just give you a sense of how far the designation. So yeah, looking at that there, and obviously it's showing the end snippet. My view is that the designation actually extends that whole area. So essentially works within that area there. You're basically be able to continue without further resource consents, provided obviously continue to be in line with the designation being the cemetery purpose.
Nathan just told me that in this plan, this part here, number 12, was what had been set aside for potential natural burial. Cool. Thank you.
Sorry.
Oh.
I'm just looking at the long-term plan, and there's nothing. We talk about Fox and Manukau and Shannon in terms of development for cemeteries, but nothing for Levin. Is that?
Yeah, no, I'm not sure.
It's on a separate page.
There is money set aside for this year. Yeah.
But not until year 9.
There should be money this year, 150,000.
No, I'm just looking under infrastructure to replace existing asset.
Oh, just while you're looking for it, I'll ask something else. With them, because we haven't seen the Manukau with the Shannon, and then we know about the capacity issues at Manukau. The community would know this, I guess. But how well might we know in terms of like our timing of, because I know they use it. I've got some immediate family in there. Because they might need to start conversations perhaps around reinstating their own, like expanding their own, if you know that there's going to be I don't know how soon are you.
So we do have a plan for the other cemeteries. We just, because we don't have budget, we're not presenting on those today. But we will come back to you with those. However, there is within that there is a look at what it would look like if we expanded our footprint, and purchased or acquired additional land that is neighbouring to the current cemetery there.
Just to quickly jump in on that one, with Manukau, I think it was one of the cemeteries we pushed the funding out as part of the LTP, based on where we think we need to do that work. When we had the work done in Manukau last year before, there was some beam extensions there that created a number of extra plots, so we think we've got some capacity there for a few years yet.
And it's relatively low number of burials there per year.
No further questions?
Thank you, but I just wanted to support Piri's point around Manukau and Wehiwi. I think there is a need really for a conversation, future planning, whatever that looks like.
So just to wrap it up as well, I know that Stefan has been doing a lot of work with Wehiwi as part of the development, what the future plans are. So they are definitely have been engaged throughout.